At 8:42 a.m. local time, somewhere in the Caribbean Sea, the radar screen looked ordinary. Most of the contacts were exactly what the crew expected to see. Distant commercial traffic, slow-moving vessels, predictable routes, nothing unusual. Then, almost all at once, 8 new surface contacts appeared. They did not show up one after another. They arrived together. The spacing was too clean to feel random. The distance between them suggested planning, not coincidence. The radar operator paused, narrowed the display, and studied the pattern. Each contact held a steady course. No AIS. No identification signal. No commercial profile. 8 vessels, moving quietly, with no electronic signature. The officer of the deck leaned closer to the console. In these waters, fishing boats were common. Patrol craft were expected. But 8 vessels appearing at the same time, with no digital footprint, was something different. It was not enough to trigger an immediate response, but it was enough to change the atmosphere. Mark and track, came the calm order. By 8:44 a.m., the contacts were assessed as naval-type hulls based on their speed, spacing, and radar return. They were not large fleet units, but they were not civilian vessels either. Their silhouettes matched patrol-class ships. The formation was not tight, but it was not scattered. It looked practiced, it looked intentional. Out on deck, the Caribbean still appeared peaceful. Clear sky, calm water, no obvious signs of tension. From a distance, it would have looked like nothing more than a U.S. Navy vessel moving steadily through international waters. Inside the ship, however, the mood had shifted, not into panic, into focus. By 8:46 a.m., long-range optics were brought online. The camera feed confirmed what the radar had already suggested: gray hulls, angular profiles, naval paint, Venezuelan naval vessels. 8 of them were spread across multiple bearings, closing the distance without rushing. No radio calls, no warnings, no acknowledgement. That silence mattered. At sea, communication is part of routine professionalism, especially when naval vessels operate near one another. A hail, a signal, a simple confirmation of intent, something to reduce uncertainty. But silence leaves space for interpretation. And at sea, interpretation can become the most fragile part of any encounter. At 8:48 a.m., the first hail went out over open channels. No response. A second hail followed moments later, repeated clearly, professionally, and without provocation. Still nothing. The 8 Venezuelan vessels held their course. Their speed remained moderate, but constant. They were not rushing forward. They were not drifting aimlessly. They were moving with purpose, and every mile they closed made the situation more precise, more compressed, more serious. Inside the Tactical Information Center, analysts began calculating closest points of approach. If nothing changed, several of the vessels would pass well inside normal safety margins, close enough to apply pressure, close enough to test reactions. This did not look accidental. At 8:51 a.m., one Venezuelan vessel made a subtle heading change, just a few degrees, barely noticeable to the naked eye, but clear on radar. The adjustment placed it on a more direct line toward the projected path of the U.S. Navy ship. It was the first move that could not be dismissed. Not forceful enough to justify a major response, not harmless enough to ignore. The captain was briefed in short, factual terms. 8 vessels. No AIS. No answer to repeated hails. One contact maneuvering closer. All actions logged. Cameras recording. Rules of engagement unchanged. Maintain course, the captain ordered. Continue documentation. The ship did not turn away. It did not increase speed. It did not slow down. Professional restraint is not weakness. It is control. And at sea, control is power. By 8:55 a.m., the Venezuelan formation was unmistakable. The ships were no longer simply approaching. They were positioning. The angles tightened. The spacing began to make sense. What had looked scattered minutes earlier now appeared deliberate. A formation does not have to fully close around a ship to send a message. It only has to move close enough for that message to be understood. There were no sudden flashes, no emergency alarms, no open confrontation, but the calm of the Caribbean had changed. Something had begun at 8:42 a.m. when those 8 contacts first appeared on radar. And from that moment forward, every decision would matter. By 9:03 a.m., the pattern could no longer be ignored. What began as 8 distant radar returns had become a coordinated formation in motion. The Venezuelan naval vessels were no longer holding simple parallel tracks. One by one, they adjusted their headings. Small changes, measured and deliberate. Viewed separately, each movement looked minor. Viewed together, the message was clear. The U.S. Navy ship now sat inside a tightening geometry, not fully enclosed, not yet, but under unmistakable pressure. On the radar display, the contacts begin to spread into a wide arc. 2 vessels move toward the starboard side, keeping a steady distance. 3 more settle off the port quarter. The remaining ships stay slightly farther back, adding depth to the formation. It is a classic pressure pattern, designed to limit options without making any single move look openly aggressive. At sea, distance is a language, and now that language is becoming impossible to ignore. The bridge crew follows every shift in bearing. Every small change in speed is recorded. Closest point of approach calculations update in real time, and the trend is moving in the wrong direction. If no one changes course, at least 2 Venezuelan vessels will pass inside 2 nautical miles, close enough for intent to matter more than routine procedure. At 9:06 a.m., another hail is transmitted. Calm, clear, professional. No answer. By now, the silence no longer feels accidental. Long-range cameras zoom in, the image sharpens. Crews are visible on several Venezuelan ships, helmets on. Personnel gathered near railings and forward sections. No systems appear to be actively directed, but the posture is alert, focused, watching. Inside the Combat Information Center, analysts quietly mark the details. This is not a casual patrol crossing paths. The formation is too precise. The spacing is too consistent. These crews know exactly where they are, and they know exactly who they are approaching. At 9:09 a.m., a small but important change takes place. One Venezuelan vessel increases speed by just 2 knots. By itself, that would mean little. In this context, it says a lot. The ship edges ahead of the others, tightening the gap near the projected path of the U.S. Navy vessel. The formation compresses again. Still, the U.S. ship does not maneuver. Changing course now could be read as a reaction. Slowing down might look like uncertainty. Speeding up could raise the tension even further. The safest move, strangely enough, is steadiness. Hold course, hold speed. The captain repeats the order. Professional restraint is not passive, it is calculated. At 9:12 a.m., electronic sensors detect the first active emissions. Low-power surface search radar from one of the Venezuelan vessels. Not a direct targeting signal, not an immediate escalation, but it is no longer just passive observation. They are now actively tracking the ship. Every emission is recorded, frequencies are logged, power levels are measured. Nothing dramatic happens in that moment, but every new data point adds weight to the picture, forming inside the command spaces. This is controlled friction, carried out just below the line where the situation would change completely. From the bridge wing, binoculars confirm what the sensors already show. The Venezuelan ships are closer now. Hull numbers are visible, flags move in the wind. There is no confusion about identity, no confusion about location. Both sides know exactly who is out here. At 9:15 a.m., the formation settles into place. 8 Venezuelan naval vessels now sit in a loose semicircle, all within visual range. No ship cuts directly across the bow. No vessel makes a sudden move. The positioning is careful, almost choreographed. Pressure without a clear trigger. This is the gray zone. The captain receives the updated brief. Closest contacts inside 2 nautical miles. Multiple vessels maneuvering in coordination. No direct action taken, but clear pressure being applied. Rules of engagement remain unchanged. The decision is simple, but not easy. React too strongly and the moment could turn into something larger. Turn away and the pressure has worked. Hold steady, and the other side must decide how far it is willing to push. The U.S. Navy ship holds steady. By 9:18 a.m., the encounter has drawn an invisible line across the water. 8 Venezuelan vessels have tested that line without fully crossing it. But the formation is now in place. The silence remains unbroken, and whatever happens next will not come from drift, confusion, or chance. It will come from choice. At 9:21 a.m., the situation shifts again. On the radar screen, 2 Venezuelan vessels begin to accelerate. The increase is gradual. 3 knots, then 4. But there is no mistaking it. Their headings adjust together, narrowing the angle toward the bow of the U.S. Navy ship. This is no longer just a loose formation applying pressure. This is a deliberate tightening of space. Inside the Combat Information Center, the reaction is immediate. Closest point of approach calculations refresh once more, and this time the numbers move into a caution range. One contact is now projected to pass inside 1 nautical mile if neither vessel changes course. That distance matters. At sea, 1 nautical mile is not a collision distance, but it is close enough to force decisions, close enough to turn routine judgment into something far more serious, close enough that every movement now carries meaning. At 9:23 a.m., the bridge sends another hail. This time it is firmer, more direct, and repeated in both English and Spanish. The wording is careful, leaving no room for confusion about position, international waters, or expected safe conduct. Still, there is no reply. Instead, one Venezuelan vessel shifts its heading by a few more degrees, moving closer to the projected path of the U.S. Navy ship. The maneuver is smooth, controlled, and clearly intentional. It is the kind of move meant to draw a response without openly crossing the line. The bridge crew watches in silence as the geometry tightens. Log the maneuver, the captain orders. Continue recording. By 9:25 a.m., sensors detect a second active radar emission. Another Venezuelan ship briefly moves from passive observation to active scanning, sending out low-power pulses across the area. Not a direct lock, not an immediate trigger, but no longer innocent either. They are testing limits. Electronic specialists record the frequencies and duration. Every signal is captured, time-stamped, and stored. This is no longer only about awareness in the moment. It is documentation, a record of intent in case the situation develops further. On the horizon, the Venezuelan ships are now close enough for individual movements on deck to be seen. Sailors shift positions. A small group gathers near a forward deck system on one vessel. It is not actively operated, but the visual message is clear. Pressure without contact, intent without open confrontation. At 9:27 a.m., the captain brings senior watch officers together on the bridge. The assessment is brief and precise. 8 ships, 2 maneuvering with increased pressure. Multiple active radar emissions. No communication, no forward systems actively operated. The rules remain clear. There has been no direct action requiring a defensive response, but there is also no requirement to give way. Prepare aviation option, the captain says. The order moves through the ship quietly, but its meaning is decisive. Below deck, the flight crew begins moving with practiced efficiency. No alarms, no panic, no disorder. This is not a rushed launch. It is a measured increase in presence, a signal that can be seen, recorded, and understood without a single kinetic action. At 9:30 a.m., the Venezuelan vessel nearest the bow increases speed again. The closest point of approach drops further, less than a mile now. Its wake stretches behind it, white lines cutting sharply through the blue Caribbean water. The message is no longer subtle. Inside the Combat Information Center, one voice breaks the tension. Contact maneuvering with intent. That phrase matters. It is not a declaration of open confrontation, but it is the point where the situation begins moving toward the next level of response. On the bridge, the captain watches the approaching vessel through binoculars. He does not raise his voice. He does not give dramatic orders. He simply waits one final moment, giving the Venezuelan crew every opportunity to change course. They do not. At 9:32 a.m., the decision is made. Launch the helicopter. The order is calm. Final. This is the line. Not a threat, not an attack. A presence, visible, controlled, and impossible to ignore. As the U.S. Navy ship holds course and speed, the flight deck comes alive. Rotor blades begin to turn. The sound cuts through the still Caribbean air and carries across the water toward the Venezuelan formation. For the first time since 8:42 a.m., the silence is broken. Not by radio, not by warning, but by unmistakable intent. The encounter has moved from quiet pressure into open signaling. And now, the next move belongs to the air. At 9:34 a.m., the helicopter lifts from the deck. Its rotors slice through the still air, pushing ripples across the surface of the sea below. The sound travels far, farther than any unanswered hail, and every ship in the Venezuelan formation hears it. This is not an emergency launch. There is no confusion on deck, no frantic movement. Every step is controlled, deliberate, and clearly planned. The aircraft climbs to a low operational altitude and moves forward, angling toward the tightening arc of Venezuelan vessels. From the bridge, the captain watches in silence. The ship stays on course. Speed remains unchanged. Nothing about the U.S. Navy vessel suggests fear. Nothing suggests retreat. The message is quiet but clear. We are not the ones moving. You are. At 9:36 a.m., the helicopter crosses the forward edge of the Venezuelan formation. Not directly overhead, not in a way designed to provoke. It passes offset, far enough to remain professional, close enough to demand attention. Its sensors are already active. Electro-optical systems sharpen their view, focusing on hull numbers, deck crews, and bridge windows. Every detail is recorded. Inside the helicopter, the crew works with calm precision. The pilot holds a steady line. The sensor operator calls out bearings and distances. Video feeds stream back to the ship in real time, time-stamped and geo-referenced. This is not intimidation, it is documentation. At 9:38 a.m., the helicopter slows and begins a controlled orbit near the most assertive Venezuelan vessel. The same ship that had moved inside a mile, the same one that adjusted course first. From this angle, the contrast becomes impossible to miss. On the Venezuelan deck, crew members look up. Some raise their hands to block the sun. Others point toward the aircraft. A few move back toward the superstructure. The helicopter changes the situation immediately. Ships can use angles, distance, and timing to create pressure. Aircraft make the picture much harder to deny. A calm warning is transmitted from the helicopter. The tone is neutral. The wording is professional. There is no shouting, no drama, no emotional edge. This is a United States Navy aircraft. You are operating unsafely in international waters. Alter course immediately. The message is then repeated slowly and clearly in Spanish. For the first time since the encounter began, hesitation becomes visible. At 9:41 a.m., the nearest Venezuelan vessel reduces speed. Not sharply, not dramatically, but enough for its wake to shorten behind it. The closest point of approach begins to widen. Another vessel, positioned farther along the arc, starts to drift back, increasing its distance by a small but noticeable margin. The moves are minor, but they are real. The helicopter keeps its orbit. It does not chase. It does not move directly overhead. It does not crowd the formation. The pressure now comes from presence, not pursuit. Its cameras continue recording every adjustment, every change in spacing, every shift in posture. On board the U.S. Navy ship, the Combat Information Center updates the captain. Contact 1 reducing speed. Contact 3 increasing range. No further active radar emissions. The formation is beginning to loosen. At 9:44 a.m., a brief radio transmission breaks through the static. Venezuelan naval call signs are heard for the first time, though not directed at the U.S. ship. It is internal coordination chatter, repositioning instructions. They are recalculating. The helicopter widens its orbit, now visible to the entire formation. Its silhouette stands against the bright Caribbean sky, not there to provoke, but impossible to ignore. Everyone on the water understands what it represents. Not just one aircraft, a wider network behind it. At 9:47 a.m., the most forward Venezuelan vessel changes course. Only a few degrees, but enough to break the intercept line, enough to show that a decision has been made. Then others begin to follow. The arc opens, the distances grow. What had looked like a tightening formation only minutes earlier now starts to stretch and thin. There is no announcement, no formal statement, no explanation over the radio, but the movement says everything. The helicopter remains overhead until the change is clear beyond doubt. At 9:50 a.m., the aircraft turns back toward the U.S. Navy ship. The rotors tilt. Speed increases slightly. The message has been delivered, and it has been understood. From the bridge, the captain gives a single nod. The turning point has passed. No dramatic action was needed. No raised voices, no sudden move, but the encounter has changed direction completely. Not through force, through controlled escalation. The pressure that began on the surface has now been reversed from above, and the outcome is no longer uncertain. By 9:52 a.m., the balance has shifted. The helicopter returns to the flight deck with practiced precision. The rotors slow, the deck crew secures the aircraft. From the outside, it looks routine, just another launch and recovery under clear Caribbean skies. But everyone on board knows what just happened. Momentum has changed, and it has changed decisively. On the radar screen, the Venezuelan formation continues to reshape itself. The tight arc that had pressed inward is dissolving. One ship increases lateral distance, another falls back from the group, its speed dropping below the others. The vessel that had moved closest now holds a steady heading that no longer interferes with the U.S. ship's path. No apology comes over the radio, no explanation is offered, none is needed. At sea, movement is communication. At 9:55 a.m., the captain orders a final status review. All contacts remain in the area, but their behavior has changed. They are no longer trying to restrict movement. They are observing from distance. Passive sensors only. No further active emissions. No course changes aimed at closing the gap. The message has landed. The U.S. Navy ship does not alter course. It does not reduce speed. It does not accelerate to make a point. It simply continues as before. Steady heading, steady speed. Disciplined posture. That is the quiet expression of control. Changing course now would suggest the pressure had worked. It had not. From the bridge wing, the Venezuelan ships remain visible on the horizon, but the distance is growing. Their wakes now angle away instead of inward. The formation is no longer moving as one coordinated shape. It is becoming separate vessels making separate choices. At 9:58 a.m., one Venezuelan ship breaks farther south. Another turns slightly west. The remaining vessels trail behind at increasing range, still visible but no longer close. The encirclement is over. Inside the Combat Information Center, analysts complete the logs. Timelines are finalized. Video files are archived. Radar tracks are saved. Every maneuver, every signal, every course change is preserved with timestamps and coordinates. This is not simply a report, it is a record. Moments like this rarely end with a dramatic finale. More often, they end in logs, camera files, radar tracks, timestamps, and quiet decisions made under pressure. At 10:02 a.m., the captain receives the final update. No contacts maneuvering with intent, no active sensor activity, no current safety violations. Maintain normal operations, he orders, and that is all. No announcement, no celebration, no theatrical ending. The ship continues on its course, but the meaning of the encounter remains. 8 Venezuelan naval vessels had tried to apply pressure without crossing into direct confrontation. They tested distance. They tested silence. They tested coordinated movement. They pushed just far enough to make the boundary clear, then pulled back when the response showed that continuing would carry real consequences. This is what modern naval pressure looks like. Not chaos. Calculation. Not noise. Restraint. What happened in these waters was not weakness. It was control, shown quietly and with discipline. The U.S. Navy ship did not need to make a dramatic display. It only needed to prove 3 things. It would not yield, it would not overreact, and it would not be forced away from its lawful course. That combination, patience, discipline, and capability, is often harder to challenge than raw power alone. As the Caribbean returns to calm, the Venezuelan ships fade into the distance. Their radar returns grow smaller. Their wakes stretch out and disappear into the blue water. The encounter is over, but the lesson remains. In international waters, control does not belong to the loudest voice, the closest hull, or the side trying hardest to apply pressure. It belongs to the side that knows when to hold steady, when to respond, and when to make the other side reconsider, without ever turning the moment into open confrontation. And this time, that is exactly what happened.